Welcome everybody to Ditch Digger CEO. And man, am I excited about this one. I'm totally stoked about this one, Q.
Me too. Oh yeah.
You know this guy, and I know this guy like a brother, and you know him well also because he's a guy that's always raising his hand. Yeah, I can help out.
Servant leader, treats me like a son. Amazing man, absolutely. So
yeah, no, we got a lot of experience with this guy. Today we welcome my buddy Paul Darley. Paul,
hi, Gary. Thanks for having me here today.
Thanks for being here.
Wasn't sure if I was the right candidate, but after all those nice accolades.
Yeah. Right, there's a lot more than that. We'll be bragging up on Paul the whole time here because we know so much about you. But you are it's funny because on these so far and for the first 30 or 40, 50, they're going to be people that I know pretty well.
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
And I consider a lot of these people good friends, but I can't take this lightly. I consider you one of my top 10 friends, and I learned about top 10 and top 20 and top 50 and top 100 from my buddy Paul Darley. So in life, Q, when you got this list of friends you grow, we're all blessed to have some good friends from the friends we grew up with, the friends we went to high school with. I still got some really good friends I went to high school with and grade school with, right? And you accumulate this list of friends, but who do you spend the most time with, right? And it's a question that some of us are afraid to answer. It'd be like, Q, you know what, man? I can't get out with you this weekend because I'm going out with a few of my top 10 friends, and you're number 22 right now, and if you were in the top 10, you'd probably be included, but you're not, and hopefully you don't feel too bad about that. But again, you can't. You got to have enough guts to be able to do this, and there's one person in my life that's got the guts to do that, and that's Paul Darley right here. And so he's taught me that. I've got about my top 20 right now. I don't have my top 50 or 100. Maybe I don't even have more than 20. But bottom line is, it's actually a really good way when you think about organizing your life and who you're going to spend the rest of your time with and stuff. Why wouldn't you understand who the friends are that you love the most, that you want to spend the most time with, right? So Paul does this. Paul, let's start out with that because it's so fun to
well, you got to be a little careful with it because a lot of people are offended by it and don't But you're exactly right. It's all about prioritizing your life and knowing where you want to spend your time and who you want to spend your time with. Today, is it family and are you spreading yourself too thin? And just as you're, we all have a finite amount of time to do work and spend time with family and friends, and I find in particular women find it to be particularly offensive. I'm not sure why, but they do, and a lot of guys do as well. But there are folks who come to appreciate it, and it's a little bit odd. Heidi and I, my wife Heidi, she and I have described myself as quantitatively quirky. So I do everything relative to a scale of 1 to 10. Hey, how's your life on a scale of 1 to 10? Just really everything in my life has this scale. I'm not quite sure where it comes from. It obviously is innate in me. And so it was very natural for me as I grew older to just kind of number my friends. Kind of as a funny thing. I have this top 10 party every year. I take or every other year now, since Heidi made it go to every other year, where we go on, down to Florida or whatever, and we have a good time. And it really, it's really for fun, but at the same time, it does help me prioritize my time and let me know who I want to be with.
Well, I'll tell you, it's actually a little bit frustrating for me because your invites go out too late. I couldn't make it the last 2 times. And both times you said, Raymine, you're dropping back down and you're not going to make the top 10. I think you might be 11, 12, 15. I'm not sure, but you missed it again. I said, well, Paul, if you'd invite me like at least a few weeks ahead of time, it would help.
Well, I can always do a stand-in.
There you go. We'll keep you in mind, Q.
But I think that's really cool, actually, and you do it in a way that isn't offensive, in my opinion, at all, and it's a lot of fun. You've got people that understand that they're great friends of yours, and I know you're in the top of their list as well, just like you are mine, and it's fun because it focuses your attention, and I think actually, I believe in the 80-20 rule, right? It's a little bit like that, a little more precise, I think, you are than that. But I think of customers, I think of friends, I think of your closet, organized in 80-20. What friends do you want to spend? What 20% of your friends do you want to spend 80% of your friendship time with the rest of your life?
Sure.
What clothes in your closet do you spend 80? You wear 80% of the time, that are probably less than 20% of your clothes. Get rid of the rest, right?
Yeah.
Customers. I mean, we have great customers across the board, but you know what? We have probably less than 20% of our customers deliver over 80% of the value of our businesses.
Sure.
And if we don't treat them a little better, right, we're probably not going to have them very long. And so I believe the focus on that that my opinion, the top 20%. But like your top 10 friends, top 20 friends, and otherwise, I think it's cool.
And the secret with the 80-20 is really to treat everyone fairly, not equally. So you want to treat that customer who's in that lower 20 percentile, 30 percentile, treat them fairly and respectfully, but you just don't want to give them the same type of VIP service that you're going to give your top 10 customers.
And they'll some of those will rise to your top 20% in those VIPs.
Absolutely.
And if you don't treat them fairly, they never will. Right?
That's right.
By identifying those that can is an important thing.
And also the numbering thing. So in my life, it's separated in my mind by these silos or these buckets. So I've got buckets not only for friends, but for family and for business and for God. And so I go to wherever that bucket is on a scale of 1 to 10. I can visualize these buckets all the time. And so if my family bucket is down, I'll call a family dinner and we fill that bucket up and get it back up to
which God is in the top 10? Which one?
Well, no. I'm saying with respect to my relationship with God. Hey, do I need to step this up a little bit? And it's interesting, Gary. We start off most of our YPO meetings. We're together in the same forum once a month or so. And as I check in with people, hey, where's your life on a scale of 1 to 10? Our rule is somewhat, if you're below a 7, you got to talk about it. So somebody can very quickly go from being a 9 to a 4, maybe they have an illness in their family, a death in their family, whatever it is, and it gives them an opportunity to, if they're under a 7, to talk about that and get that off their mind and get help.
And if you don't have that conversation, like you said, Paul, if you don't have that conversation up front, you really don't know. People aren't going to come on and say, my life is a 2 right now, right? But if you have the conversation, people think, they reflect about the last month or 2 months since they've been together, and they can tell you you're pretty close, whether they're a 9.5 and this guy goes to a 9.876, and he has a reason for every one of those points within that rating.
I think we should move on, but we're good. We've run this one.
All right, so let's go into family quick. I mean,
sure.
What a great family to explain. Tell us about that awesome.
So first off, I run our 110-year-old family business with an executive team that consists of my brother and 2 cousins. And they, along with the rest of my family, appointed me as president when my dad really couldn't make the decision in 1997. Actually, my brother and my cousin recommended that I step up and run the family business at that point, based primarily on my organizational skills and communication skills. So I've been entrusted with that responsibility. And so our business is 110 years old. I'm 3rd generation. There's 15 of us in the 3rd generation who own the business, 9 of whom work in the business. And then I was 7th out of 8 kids growing up. So I grew up in a large Catholic West Side, River Forest, Illinois, kind of an upper middle class area. But I was raised thinking I was a ditch digger. I mean, I was certain we were the poorest family in town, and had to work for everything growing up. So I can't really, I love the name of it, and I can't really. I had a little bit of a silver spoon, but I never knew I did. I certainly never felt I did, but I certainly had privilege that that helped where I am today. I married my high school sweetheart, Heidi, who's the love of my life. We've been married together 32 years, and she primarily has raised our 3 kids as I've traveled the world and grew our business over the last 30 years. But amazing woman. 2 of our daughters got married this summer, and our youngest is a school teacher 4 blocks away from our house.
Wow.
In Elmhurst. So living the American dream, and all good, and 2 nice son-in-laws who just came into our family. So great family.
You do have an awesome family. I was blessed enough to be around those weddings and everything else. And gosh, you exude family. I mean, it's not just you, your direct family, your family that's in your business with you, your friends. I mean, it's like you don't know who family is when you're around you and all those people. But it's a blast. Let's go back to we talk about the ditch digger thing, and usually there are a lot of gritty stories, right? And I look at a lot of my friends that I get to know as leaders in business. Either they got grit because they grew up in a tough environment, as in a poor family, whatever, and they're not afraid to get beat up, or they get beat up and they bounce right back. Paul, I've got a bunch of friends, and it's not really common, but a bunch of my friends that are successful in business, they almost created their own grit, or they had grit even if they grew up with money, and you're one of those, right? I mean, the stories of you riding your bike from River Forest to Lake Geneva at a young age with your buddies.
7th grade. Yeah, one buddy. Yeah, left at 2 o'clock in the morning.
So I mean, you're all about grit. You're a gritty guy, and I've got other friends like you that actually do things to establish grit, even that realize they didn't have it early on. And those people are just as successful and tough and entrepreneurial in business as those that they grew up with nothing, right? But I see where there's a lack of grit. I think there's often it's a tougher road to success, in my opinion. So when I look at your how you've been ingrained in the family business and the story of the family business is a gritty one. It's a cool one. Go back to the very beginning, and you got to mention the car maker dude that had a little bit to do with it. Ford.
Absolutely. Go back in our
fire
history.
truck, that type of
absolutely.
stuff.
Yeah, that's good, Gary. And I'll tell you, first off, I think, in my own mind, and I'm a big believer in grit as well. I think grit is where passion and execution meet. Is when I think of people who have got that grittiness and that drive and the eye of the tiger is what I've yelled at my kids all their life. I mean, whether they're on the soccer field or going out the door to school that day, it's eye of the, nobody's going to give it to you. You got to go out and get it and all of that. And I think that was, some of it was maybe birth order and all the rest. But going back to our company history, my grandfather modeled our company, founded it in 1908 after he had started 2 other companies and sold them both very successfully before he was 32 years old. So he started our company at age 31 in 1908 and modeled it after Sears Roebuck's catalog, which started here in Chicago in the 1890s. And if you look at the Sears Roebuck's catalogs at the turn of the century, the 20th century, you would actually see the how much they look like our catalogs it's really uncanny. So and Chicago was the heartland of America, and that's why Sears and Roebuck were all located here, because they could get train transportation very easily into and out of Chicago. So It made a great place for businesses, mail order type businesses, to survive. And so he sold those catalogs or delivered those catalogs to municipalities. They were firefighting, police, municipal supplies, all across the world. In fact, 110 years later, we still print over 100,000 of these catalogs today. But in 1926, he decided he wanted to get into the fire truck business. And he went and he took a train down to Florida and had a very historic meeting with Henry Ford. And back in those days, all of the fire truck builders made their own cabin chassis. And so their trucks sold for about $5,000 to $15,000. And in 1926, my grandfather introduces a complete fire truck on a Model T chassis. You could get it any color so long as it was red. And, and for $690. So,
what?
Yeah. So all of us, you talk about disruptive technologies like there's something new. This was truly disruptive. So, and he was selling them through this catalog. In fact, we've got the original fire truck. The first one we ever built is in our headquarters here in just 5 minutes from here in Itasca, Illinois. So this totally disrupted the market, and all of these fire truck builders said, what are we going to do about this Darley company? They said, well, we know what we'll do. We'll go to the pump manufacturers and tell the pump manufacturers, if anybody sells Darley a pump, everybody else in the industry will blackball that company. So this is before the Clayton Act of 1931, which my grandfather was actually part of that legislation. So long story short, he couldn't get a pump. He had a big factory downtown Chicago. He went and he hired the chief engineer from American Steam Pump Company, one of our suppliers at the time, up in Battle Creek, Michigan. And this gentleman, Pete Yates, said, look, I'll come and build these pumps for you, but I want to do it in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, where he had grown up. The lumber industry had pulled out of there. There's a good surplus of German craftsmen and all. And long story short, and my grandfather liked to hunt and fish. It's 340 miles, from Chicago, but my grandfather liked to hunt and fish, and they said, let's do this deal. And so we began building our own fire pump in 1932. Wow. Yeah, so it was a and until that time, our family and my father, came on board in 1950. They kind of all held a grudge about the only way you could get a Darley fire pump was on a Darley fire truck. During World War II, we built hundreds of them for the military, and we built thousands of pumps for the military. And these, at the end of the war, all of these trucks were left all around the world, and that became a springboard for our international business, which today is about 50% of our fire business. Today, we're a defense contractor. We're with $300 million in sales in 2018, or just over that. We've got and so about half of that is defense contracts, and the other half is firefighting. Now, the firefighting, roughly about a half of that, roughly 50% of that business is export today. So we have offices in China, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and Nigeria.
Going back quickly, was there a time you were froze out, or there was a time that those fire truck companies froze you out, your grandfather out of business for a bit before you get until you get the pumps designed and ready and these trucks, or no?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what happened there. I think people just stayed with us, and because it was a mail order and because it was 1/10 the price or less of a normal truck, people stuck with us during that transition period. So. Yeah, I'm sure it was a tough time. My grandfather actually ended up dying in 1937, if you can imagine. So he had married my grandmother, who was his 19-year-old secretary when he was 50 years old. Okay, so no, you don't be laughing about that. That's my grandmother.
That's what you're talking about.
No, but so and then he had 7 kids by the time he was 57, and actually had a heart attack at our house at Lake Geneva, where you've been, and which is still in our family today. And so
your grandmother,
my grandmother ran that business. She hired a general manager who was a relative who ran it at her behest. For many years. He did a wonderful job, and Joe O'Reilly was his name. But she really ran that business until 1970. I mean, she was the sole owner of it really till 1970.
Wow. Yeah. And then how long was she in your life? She died?
She died when I was about 23 years old after college.
So you got to know her well.
She was a real strong influence in all our lives, man. She was a tough cookie. She was an Eastern European. She had come to America at age 6 with her 8-year-old sister, and they had about $13 in their pocket, and so told, get to Chicago, you've got some relatives there, and try to find them.
So she had a long runway in the business.
She did, yeah.
Think about that.
Talk about grit.
Oh my gosh.
She had grit.
Unreal. Again, think about the fact that business started that far back, but you still had really the first generation, right, in the business until 72, you said?
Second generation.
Oh, yeah. She was the second generation.
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. Yeah. No, excuse me. Yeah, sure. She was first. She was first generation.
So that's amazing.
That is amazing. That. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Wow.
You threw me off.
Wow.
I thought you meant my father.
Think about that. This first, your grandmother from the first generation, your grandfather, that was still running the business in the business 72.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay.
And she was president. I mean, I can't say she was in every day. She had an office, but major decisions, and she ran it very frugally. And our company, it's still that frugalness is still a very it's not, you won't find it on our laminated core value cards and all. It definitely is present in our business on how we, and I think it's one of the main reasons why we've been able to survive 110 years. I mean, we don't go out and really build a building or buy a company until we've got the money available, right, kind of off to the side. So we've never really taken on debt until recently because our business is growing incredibly. So we're just, working capital is kind of the name of the game. But outside of the working capital, we've never, we've got a very strong balance sheet, and as I look at inheriting that strong balance sheet and inheriting that sense of fiscal responsibility that was passed down and inculcated into our company all these years, we go and make sure that we're not living lavishly and things of that nature.
Yeah. So Q, you asked me this question a couple of podcasts ago about raising capital and all that. Yep. I think you asked it to me. Raising capital and when do you raise capital, and is it necessary always? But I mean, here's an example of an old school business that did it on their own dime and their own cash flow. Right.
Yeah.
And still today, where you can go find money with no problem. I mean, as strong as you guys are, this family business, as strong as you can go find money with no problem, and lots of it to expand crazy if you wanted to. And you're growing at a pace that's not common, in my opinion, of a business, a family business that does it all on their own dime. I mean, your growth has been incrable.
Yeah, we're up 70% this year.
That's it, just 70%.
Awesome, yeah, just 70. 71. I don't want to brag.
Wow.
No, I've got to stay humble. That's a lot of it's government contracts. It's mostly lower margin business and what we're typically enjoy. But it's a tide that raises all ships, and it's actually. It's taken a while. It's taken most of this defense contracting business. We landed our first defense contract of modern day about 10 years ago, and it was a lot of investment. For the first 5 years, we lost over $1 million a year. Mm-hmm. As we knew we were going to as we ramped up and added salespeople. But now we've got over 25 outside sales guys out there and women, 95% of whom are veterans, doing just an incredible job. And we're starting to build the vendor relationships. And people are coming to us and saying, "Hey, wow, this Darley company they're not like all the other defense contractors out there. They're a family business. They're both a manufacturer and a distributor. They've got really strong values. They're easy to work with, and it's really been a breath of fresh air for them and for us. So it's been great.
So I also look at your business, Paul. Is how challenging it is for you to be the CEO of a family business with so many family members within it, but also the awesome experience that it is for you to be able to lead this great company, be the leader of this family business that has so many great relationships of family within it. So I've been around your business to see so many family members. They're like just as pumped up as you are, literally pumped up, right, as you are about this awesome business. Can you explain the positives and negatives of that, right? Because there's a lot of both.
Yeah, there is. There's an old adage: family business can be the best of business or the worst of business. And in our case, it's clearly the best of business. I mean, we have some. We're real students of family business. I mean, I still go to Northwestern for at least 1 or 2 seminars a year. And in fact, my daughter Audrey and I put on a program there each year, and we've even taught over at the University of Dublin, Ireland. She and I, they paid for us to come over last year. Thank you very much. It was a nice trip. But we're always learning. But we have basic covenants that we live by. We don't let small things grow into big things. We try not to. We never go to bed mad at each other. We try to have transparency and mutual respect. So just as we have our own company core values, we have a company constitution that lays out our family core values. It also lays out the rules for family participating in the family business. You've got to work outside for 3 to 5 years. You're going to be held to a higher expectation than everyone else. You're going to be paid market rate. All of these things that are typical family best practices. We have family meetings and family retreats, and we start education in the company at a very young age. We teach fiscal responsibility to the kids. So we've got 5th generation now who will not be that far off from they'll be in this business before we know it. So of the 4th generation, there's 35, 7 of whom are now active in the business. There's 31. 7 of the 31 are now active in the business. Okay. And what we realized about 10, 15 years ago was that with all these 31 horses, sitting in the barn, ready to, that we needed to grow this trough to feed them all, and we weren't going to be able to feed them just with this fire business because the fire business is shrinking. When you and I were kids, a fire truck would go out of a station, it'd be responding to a fire about 40% of the time. How often would you guess Quentin responds to a fire now? If a fire truck, you see it going out of a station, I don't want to put you on the spot. You want me to answer?
What you just did.
All right, okay. Well, it's actually less than 4%.
Yeah, I was about to say I don't.
Yeah, so there's everything sprinkled. There's better electrical codes. There's fewer smokers. Everything's flame resistant materials. There's really no other than wildfires that we're experiencing this week, terrible in California and other things. That's really the only gross segment. I don't like to use that word necessarily when it comes to fires, but for our company, when you're in that business, that's the really only gross segment, and we do very well in that. So we realized we needed to reinvent our business if we were going to be big enough to support all of these horses who were going to come up and join us at some point. So
absolutely. What size? It was 97, 98, Paul, that you took on the
97,
role? Yeah. What size is the business then?
We were about 12 million, I think.
12 million.
Yeah.
So it took all those years in this family business to get to 12 million, which is a great business to the last 20.
Yeah, last 20 we've grown
300 million.
Yeah,
that's pretty good. Big. That's pretty good growth.
Well, it's two what I'm looking success principles that I'm realizing that you've whether your grandfather implemented it, and one of them is I would say it's delayed gratification. You call it fiscal responsibility. That's what I hear, delayed. You all knew how to delay, from that perspective. But I think the biggest important point is knowing your history. I feel that a lot of people don't realize that history is extremely important for success because you appreciate what you have so much that you're willing to execute efficiently and effectively. So kudos to you all, because also, what's the percentage of a company going?
It's less than 2%.
Less than 2% for a generational,
The 4th generation.
Yeah.
Less than 2%.
It's less than 2%. It's about 0.5% for 5th generation.
And you are obviously going to be part of that. So it's good to see. I guess a question that I do have is like, how did you all? I mean, and you kind of already talked about it. If you can allude to some of the things. I read your book before as well. And I can't wait to talk about that. But going from 12 to 300 million. again, a lot of those things that you are already doing, how did you all get some of those things? Those innovation, right? Like how would
Innovation, this year, over 60% of our profits are coming from products we didn't have 2 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. So 60% of our profits this year from products we didn't have 2 years ago.
Amazing.
So we've totally reinvented ourselves. And innovation is one of our core values as well. So and next year it's probably going to be no different. So we invest heavily in R&D. We're always guided by Wayne Gretzky's adage. Wayne Gretzky, he wasn't, when he was asked, hey, Wayne, you weren't the fastest skater, you weren't the best stick handler, but, how was it that you broke all of Gordie Howe's records in half the time? He said, I never went to where the puck was. I always went to where the puck was going to be, right? So in all of our thinking, we're constantly saying, all right, where's this fire puck or where's this military puck going to be going? So and if our main competitor, say, is aligned with, Coke, we want to be aligned with Pepsi, but we really want the energy drink. We really want that next new hot product that's coming out. Yeah. That's really the one that we want to get out and propel past the Coke and whatever. It's funny, we use that metaphor. I've been using that metaphor for about 10 years since we got into this division. Right now, one of our hottest selling products is water in a box. We're selling boxed water, just like you buy wine boxes, to the U.S. military. If they try dropping water bottles out of a C-130, about 40% of them break on impact.
Wow.
We give them water in a box. Less than 0.5% of the boxes and water bags get damaged, but now they're also not dealing with all the recycling. Their shelf life goes from 6 months in a bottle to 3.5 years in a bag.
Wow.
And they're able to put 30% more into a plane. And as the military is now moving to these forward operating bases and smaller platoons, these water eardrops have become really critical. So, look, it doesn't have to be completely revolutionary. Water in a box, I probably came up with, actually Kevin Sofin, one of our young business development guys, came up with the idea. But we're continuing to innovate. It doesn't have to be something radical. A lot of our innovation can be something that is incremental.
So when I think about that, innovation is key to our success as well, Paul. So we're always thinking that way, but sometimes we're at the bleeding edge and doesn't stop bleeding, right? So how do you identify stuff that you're going to invest in innovatively, like and say the odds of success are 80%.
Yes.
And this one, man, I don't believe in this, but my team does. We're going to invest in it, but the odds aren't that good.
Well, right? You're right. Only 5% of new products introduced make it. You know that. I think probably you know that statistically for any company. Less than 5% of new products that are introduced make it. So what we do is, we just came off a 3-day strategic planning meeting with our management team up at our plant in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. We also have plants, by the way, in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and Waterloo, Iowa. But one of the exercises that I did at our last management meetings, I said to every manager, and there we follow a lot of typical brainstorming, not criticizing, things of that nature. But to every manager, I said, okay, if I gave you $10 million today, what would you invest it in? As a business. So it's just kind of, thought process. And then we also empower. We invest heavily in business development, and we've got some great young millennials on our team who are, looking for where the puck's going constantly, and they're more in tune than maybe mid-50-year-old guys like us, Gary, are. But they, they're constantly looking at, what's out there that we can do to innovate and follow that puck.
Awesome.
Where the puck's going to be.
And we'll go into that, the millennial team, and we.
I got a question about that.
We love ours here. I didn't understand millennials 8 or 10 years ago until my one of my kids started came into our business, and another one of them came into the business, right? And they're the ones that pulled me aside and said, Dad, you're not going to keep anybody like me working in this company if that's the way you're going to treat us, right? And they started educating me on what the expectations were for millennials today, and this is again about 8 or 10 years ago, and now we I think we understand them better than ever because of so many millennials that are on our team, and the fact that I'm listening, and our old leaders like myself are listening to them and actually getting amazing value out of millennials that we didn't really understand we could get, right? How do you mesh that in your large organization today, Paul? What does that look like?
Yeah, so we're still evolving too, Gary. It's interesting. Gary and I exchanged emails early this morning on a lot of our millennials who live downtown are trying to avoid that hour to hour and a half commute each day. And, should we get a downtown office? And sure enough, my daughter, who Audrey, who's 30, sent me an email. Hey, here's what Raybines are doing on their downtown office. By the way, I guess she had talked to Austin or something. So we're always trying to adapt. I mean, it's summer hours, all these things that are so anti 110-year-old business. It's hard to suck it up and say, yeah, we're gonna let remote working, working remotely, or set up the Chicago office, or summer weekend hours, whatever, summer hours, Fridays off, whatever.
What do we call it? Working differently? I think they're calling around here now, right?
Is that right? Okay, yeah. So we, I got to tell you, we're not great at it. We got to evolve with the times. I mean, we're doing it very, step by step, incrementally, changing things, that have been ingrained in our culture for so long that they take just time to step back and say, yep, times are changing. We gotta change with the times.
It's tough. We own buildings and real estate, but we don't own anything downtown. We rent downtown, the space you're talking about, and it's like, man, we got extra space. I got 50,000 square foot of vacant space in this office building we're in right now. And that became open in the last year. We need to get this filled. Get your butts back in here in Schaumburg, right? Yeah. Like, absolutely not, Dad. We can't find the talent in Schaumburg at this point, and when you tell us we can, we'll think about it. Otherwise, downtown we're finding the talent we want in this technology business and these businesses where they want millennials, right? So again, you push back, but as long as they can prove it, you can measure the success and they can prove it.
Yeah.
Nothing we can say.
And I think a lot of people need to realize when it comes to millennials, we want flexibility and stability. I mean, that's really one of the biggest things. The more flexibility we have with a stable organization gives us the opportunity to, what we like to do, change the world. So and that's really extremely important. It gives us that feeling of freedom, right? If you think about ugly, I come from a background of recruiting. I used to recruit for Bank of America, thank God. But I appreciate where I came from. But even every single day, just seeing it, I was out of it sometimes because I'm like, all right, I got to be here every single day at the exact same time, every single time, and it becomes mundane, right? And we just really just want to go out there and just kick butt. And if we can have the flexibility to do it and give value to a stable organization, it gives us it makes us feel like we're doing something important. So,
yeah, no, we find that as long as we Austin, Janelle, you, like the millennials in our company understand how to measure success without saying 8 o'clock to 6 o'clock. I want your salary. I want your 8 o'clock to 6, not 8 o'clock to 4 or 5. Right? Instead of that mentality, now today it's like, hey, when will you be in the office so we know? What are you going to be doing outside? And then they figure out what to measure on, right? The metrics are very important in how you measure. And I think millennials like that, and they're cool with it. And as long as they're in roles that can be measured easy enough, it's no problem, right?
And so long as you can continue to take care of your customers. There's certain things that need,
that's part of the measurement.
We're still part of a telemarketing company, and we need people behind the desk. So it creates this, geez, how come all the young guys are working downtown are not coming in? And, I'm here working 8 to 6 every day and feeling unappreciated. So, it's how you balance these two. Particularly in these older cultures.
Same thing. So we have engineers, we have estimators, we have project managers. They can't work from anywhere, right? They're on the jobs. They have to be, right? So one of the biggest measurements for us is measuring the customer, customers' appreciation or not, right? If they like what's going on, and we're good. If they don't, then we have a problem. But to figure out who can do it, who can't, is a challenge, and then describing to your team why they need to be in the office for that 8 or 10 hours or 12 hours a day when many of them aren't.
Yeah, right.
So that's fun, but it's all fun, and when you think of the generations and the changes in from one to the other for you, Paul. Now you're in the fourth and the fifth generation. What's it going to look like 2 generations from now?
Yeah, right.
Are we going to have office buildings then? I'm not sure. Right? They're going to be a lot smaller probably if we do.
Perhaps, yeah.
So when we think about your road to success personally, Paul, and we look at you're educated at some great institutions. You've done you seek out on a constant basis, from what I know, more education in your industry and leadership. You're one of the best at that. Tell me about your education and where you feel you got the most benefit as a leader.
Yeah, great, Gary. So I went to parochial, went to Catholic grade school, high school, St. Ignatius, grade school, a block away from my house at St. Luke's in River Forest, where my family had, my grandfather had donated the altar in 1920. So really strong, real roots there, always kind of feeling a sense of belonging, Ignatius, I went there primarily because my mother wanted me to not live this sheltered suburban life. She wanted, St. Ignatius was a real melting pot. It had the wealthiest kids from Lakeshore Drive to the poorest kids from the housing projects, and it was really a great. And it was funny because I grew up, Gary. We had a Republican sign in our house and a Democrat sign in our house. My father was the Republican, my mother was the bleeding Democrat. And we would always have every election season, which just finished, of course. We would always have two signs in front of our house. Yeah, so and so then I went on to Marquette, which was also an urban setting, and really allowed me to. I think I gained a lot of confidence, great friends. Strong, ethical. The fact that it was a Catholic university was important to me. My mother was dying at that point, so she actually died a month into my college, so somewhat impacted my decision on, I wanted to be fairly close to home in Chicago, plus my ACT scores also probably impacted my decision as well. I think, Harvard was kind of out, I think. So I was always a B student, but and then going on to graduate school at Northwestern through their executive program, where you had to be 35 years old and you had to have 15 years of experience under your belt before they would accept you. Learning from peer learning, that was a great opportunity as well. So, and then just overarching, my father was just an incredible man. He just died earlier this year, but incredible man who his leadership, that just being around him, it was hard not to have some of that brush off on you from, not only his leadership, but the way he treated people. He made everybody feel they were the most important person in the room, so, and just, he talked, he exuded EI before anybody ever heard of emotional intelligence, so, and in fact, my book is a tribute to him, and most of the things in there are things that I learned from him over the years. So he probably had more impact than any institution I went to.
So when you think about mentorship, he's number one.
Oh, clearly.
Number one.
Yeah, clearly. Big Jim's up there too, of course. Big Jim Leotode.
Yeah, he was a great mentor to a bunch of us. Where else do you find mentorship today, and where do you look in the future?
Yeah, so I've got an incredible board. In fact, our board was named Best Board of Directors in America last year for companies 150 to 500 million in sales. And,
wow.
And I'll tell you, none of these board members are on the board because of the minor amount of money I pay them, which incidentally, if your listeners are looking at establishing a board, the benchmark for paying them is you look at what your hourly salary is, and you all in, and you decide, and you should pay them that same amount based on how many hours you expect. So
makes great sense.
So that's the benchmark on that. But I have Sam Skinner, Sam Skinner is on our board. He was chief of staff for President Bush 41. He was secretary to the Department of Department of Transportation, CEO of Commonwealth Edison and U.S. Freight. So he certainly gives a lot of guidance. Stephen Rogers, who was one of my professors at Northwestern, who's currently a professor. He was voted Professor of the Year at Northwestern 15 out of 16 years in a row. He's currently at Harvard. I went up to him and approached him actually after my first class. I said, "Oh my gosh, I got to get you on my board." He said, "Paul, let's wait and see if you pass the class, and then we can discuss it." And then we have a couple other. We have Gary Breeze, who's a former FEMA director and executive director of the International Association of Fire Chiefs. And then for the last 5 years, I've had a military representative. So I've had General Pete Schoonmaker, who was chief of staff of the United States Army. I had Joe McGuire, who was head of the Navy SEALs. And both Joe just got tapped by President Trump to be on his cabinet to run this counterterrorism. So he just replaced him.
And he told me he's got no time for him.
I asked him if we should keep the seat warm. So we actually replaced him with a gentleman, Ray Palumbo, General Ray Palumbo, who is he's a cyber expert and drone expert and clicking off a lot of the boxes on things that impact us right now. Then in addition to that, we have a defense advisory board that consists of 10 military leaders who I look to for guidance, including our good friend Ozzie Giglio and John de Blasio, your previous listener. I listened to his podcast last night. It was great. So all these people.
So as you can see, Q, this guy goes small, right? He doesn't go big. He goes small, right? If he wants to reach out for somebody to be on his board, who is there somebody in the labor force that might want an extra job, right? Or is, no,
He goes after the big whales.
no, seriously, he goes after. Well, and then the emotional intelligence you definitely got from your dad. I mean, from the first time I met you, it didn't take long for us to become good friends. You asked some good questions about me, about my hillbilly story. I asked a lot of questions about your silver spoon story.
Yeah.
No. Bottom line is you go deep and you ask good questions, and your emotional intelligence is at a very high level, and that's why you believe in it so much, and you talk about it so much in a way that people get a lot out of it. And when you think about who you want around you, you're not afraid to go ask whoever, right? Find the general you respect the most. Find the CEO you expect the most, and you've been great at that. And that doesn't come easy for a lot of people. So
it should, though. I mean, there's it's no harder to land the whale than it is. And I'm not talking about our board members only. I'm just saying in life, it often doesn't take that much more to go after the big deal than it does the smaller deal, or the big, whatever. So,
how about the wife? I mean, if you looked at Heidi, you'd say, "How did this happen?"
I peaked at like 20.
Oh no, seriously, you could use. I mean, I shouldn't say it because it's not always the case, but when you find a guy that has a wife, a girlfriend, a wife that is as spectacular as Heidi, you're saying, oh my gosh, this guy has to be a great salesman. Look at this guy, Paul. He has to be a spectacular salesman, because there's no way he finds somebody like this to spend the rest of their life with him, right?
Yeah.
But no, but
my biggest sale.
It was your biggest sale. But again, I just think that
school,
in life, why we're on this planet for a short period of time, right? Why shoot low, right? Why not go for the moon, right? Every time, and if you fall a little shy of the moon, you're still going to do probably okay.
Yeah,
right?
that's it.
Well, I have a question. When it comes to you said something about asking the right questions. I think that a lot of people, that's probably where their nervousness or their fear is. Like, man, okay, what question should I ask in order to, or even I should ask, because I know Gary's big on, Quentin, you're axing me? Are you killing me? Are you axing me? Right?
No, I like that. I like that. You don't change that.
But ultimately, like, is there certain questions that you already formulated that you know how to build rapport to ask somebody?
Yeah, that's actually a great question, Q.
Yeah.
And one of the things, going back to Heidi, to my conversations with Heidi in high school, and I'd call her on the phone, I would write out all the things I was going to talk to her about. I didn't want to be, I still do the same thing today with customers. So if I'm going to call, the CEO of Oshkosh Corporation, who's a close friend, our biggest customer, or whatever, I've got to call him with a purpose. I have written down exactly what I want to talk about. If I'm going into a duck blind with him, like I'm going to be doing in about 2 weeks here, I go into that duck blind. I've got my little notepad of all of the things I want to discuss, and I call them high impact or high EI questions. I'm not going to squander that time talking about the Bears and the Packers, although he and I went to the Bear-Packer game recently. But no, really. But my point is, I want to know about what's keeping him awake at night. Where's his life on a scale of 1 to 10? What's the biggest issue that what's he planning to do with his family, maybe over the holidays that's special? Whatever it is, I don't want to squander. I want to make sure that they're questions that are going to deepen our relationship. I call them in my book. I've come up with a word called code shifting, which is a word that I coined in the book, which means they're building blocks in a relationship that take your relationship to the next level. And you can think of like soldiers bunkered down in like in a war fight or something. That's the type of building block that they, that bond that they create in that situation is unbreakable, right? So as you can continue to, in any relationship, whether it's with your children, whether it's with a business relationship, the more of these building blocks that you can put together and actually go and solidify and create a shift in your relationship through codes. You might have certain words that you use with friends that, you don't even have to, sometimes you don't even have to, like with Heidi and I, we could just look at each other. We both know exactly those are the strongest code shifts. Well, you know exactly what you're thinking. You just don't even have to, you don't even have to say it. Mm-hmm. So in any event, I just think not squandering those times is the most important thing. And there's nothing wrong with, making notes and making sure that, you have the best utilization. I mean, Gary came here with a whole list of notes. We haven't even looked at the notes we were going to talk about, which is a wonderful thing. But yeah, okay, yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah. So I guess think about how you're going to take this business to the next generation, and in your leadership today, how do you mentor so many family members and young leaders around you today to make sure that in 20 years from now, Darley's continually growing? I don't know how it can continue to grow at the clip it's growing at, but gosh, how do you make sure that as you step down, and I know you got a long road ahead. You want to do this. I mean, you're a passionate guy. You're full of energy like a 30-year-old. So I know you're going to do this for another 20 years, probably, whatever it is. But either way, as this thing grows to $1 billion organization, $2-3 billion and more, how do you make sure that this team behind you, those 40-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 20-year-olds, they're being put in a position to succeed like you were, Paul?
Yeah, that's great, Gary. So I would say, first off, my father always had this adage that said, look, a legacy isn't something that you leave behind. It's something that you build each day. And I even heard Jimmy John say a similar one that my dad had in his quotes as well, is that it's an honor to the teacher when the student surpasses the teacher. Mm-hmm. So legacy's always on my mind. It's front and foremost all the time with respect to, making sure that the baton is passed down to the next generation properly. And just as with my generation, even though I'm chairman, CEO, and president, look, in a family business, particularly a third generation where I am, and then fourth generation, it's common for these businesses to be run what's called a cousin consortium. So that's really what we have. There's no one. So most of the decisions, while are done in a very transparent manner, that take into consideration. In our case, we've got. We've got three main branches of our business. All three branches are represented on our executive team. So my brother and I, my family had 50% ownership, and my two cousins each had about 25%. So those are the four of us who represent the family. We also have a family council that makes sure that we're constantly talking about, and accepting the best practices for family business. But on a more practical level, on a daily basis, we have what we call a G4 advisories. It's all the G4 members, and they have their own little email. And so I copy them on just about every significant email in the company, whether, probably this morning they got 4 emails from me between last night and today, just on different things, maybe ideas coming off of the management meeting, where they're just copied. I really, it's just part of this constant ongoing process to make sure that they're aware of what's going on. Empowerment is one of our core values, so they're empowered. I always make it very clear, too, that, our management team, we have 16 members on it, very purposely. We have more non-family members than we do family members. So we have 6 family members and 9 non-family members on our board, on our management team. So that shows everybody else in the office, like, you don't have to be a part of the lucky Darley Sperm Club to make it to the top of this business. We're happy that this is all collective, because, there's a lot of skills that our family doesn't possess. So it's just it's really just constantly involving them. At our management meeting, we always have 1 or 2 representatives of the fourth generation who are at our management meeting. And then we give them very special, very meaningful projects to work on, whether they're compensation plans or HR changes to our manuals, things of that nature. Come up with recommendations on particularly things that impact millennials, like we were talking earlier. Q, the decision on the email today relative to a downtown office. Look, you guys feel so strongly about this. You go out and research it, and come back and sell us on it, on why this is a good idea. So,
all right, now. I've been around your business enough to see non-family members to be as passionate as your family members. You don't know the difference. When you're talking to your non-family members, your CFO, so many people I've been around, they're just as amazingly energetic about the direction this business is, any of your family members. How do you do that? Because that's what I worry about.
So every quarter, every 90 days, I give a company address to all of the employees. They're 30 minutes, or the state of the company address in February. That's 1 hour. I tell them and we do surveys. We do employment engagement surveys and measure just about everything that you can imagine in an employee survey. Overall, including a union environment, and about 90% of our employees responding. We had a 3.3 grade point average last year on a scale of 4.0. So very high. So people when we ask them, do you feel you get enough information? 95% of them say, I get the right information, not too much, not too little. Are we headed in the right direction? Over 95% of our employees said yes or pretty much the company's headed in the right direction. So we actually, and it's part of our even 5-year strategic planning process. I invite every single employee to be a part of that. We had over 65 employees as part of our 5-year strategic planning session 5 years ago. So, and then they're constantly, we do a board of praise, which recognizes every quarter I send out a board of praise where any employee can nominate another employee to be a part of that. We do employee profit sharing. So we donate to that significantly. We've created a lot of millionaires at Darley just through our profit sharing plan.
Wow.
So they get it. They all know, and we just treat people right. And they if they're not right, we cut bait pretty quickly. And and if they are right, they get it, or they get right, or they get off. I'm sorry. And our employee turnover, voluntary employee turnover rate is less than 2%. So those are people who just actually leave of their own accord.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to just give kudos to you. I know back in April, you gave us the opportunity, and it was extremely a blessing. You did a tour for True Mentors, and we had it was 15 to 20 people there. Some were mentees, and it was an exclusive opportunity time on your calendar and things of that sort. And it was great to see a couple things, with some mentors and mentees there. And granted, it was a lot of connection, but it was great for everyone to just be in awe, one, of you being there personally and giving the tour and the history, but also really seeing exactly what you're talking about, the culture that everyone's there. I didn't know, outside of Audrey, I didn't know who was related to you. But everyone was there, was just full of life, full of energy, and you can see that they love being at Darley. And that's just a testament to what you're referring to, man. So I'm so excited that you're a mentor, actually a true mentor. It was pretty cool.
And I got a kick out of seeing Audrey at work. I mean, I've seen Audrey known Audrey since she was a younger girl for the last 10, 12 years, I guess it's been now.
At least.
She was a little kid. And it was really cool to watch her just speak so professionally and take us through the whole story and everything else. And to see her passion was really, really cool. So
it's been 20 years, by the way.
20 years? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Time flies.
Yeah, it does.
But all right, so when we think about your business, Paul, I look at every business we have, we want to be world class. I mean, our goal is to be world class. And some people say world class, right? That's a bunch of BS. Come on, world class. Well, guess what? If we can't strive to be world class, we don't want to be in a business anymore. And so the businesses we have today, the 9 companies we have today, really strive to be world class. And a couple of them, we've got a lot of differentiation, a lot of separation between the rest of the industry and a couple of our businesses, right? And I look at your business and say, man, it's world class, and for you to be able to continue to be there, you're going to do it for sure. You're in an industry, though, that I find it's a little easier than paving to strive to be passionate about world class. I'm so passionate about paving. I bleed black and white, right? Concrete and asphalt. That's just not common.
I thought it was yellow you bled. Okay, but keep going.
And red, yeah.
but for you, well, those are my colors, yeah. But I look at your business. It's pretty easy to be passionate about the military and serving this military that keeps us free, right? It's so cool to be able to serve these fire departments again that keep us safe. Mm-hmm. I mean, you got it easy to create the passion, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But again, there's a lot more. Maybe the competition's tougher because of that as well. So. Yeah, what do you use to keep this team, just passionate as heck about the industry you serve? How do you get them to be in touch with this industry they serve across the board? The firemen, our armed forces, right?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, it makes for a very easy story, and it's not just a story. It truly is a passion that people get, and you can tell if they get it or if they're going to be part of that fairly quickly or not, right? So, and when you hire veterans, let's talk about that. We probably have hired, I would guess, 50 veterans in the last 2 or 3 years. They, being in the military, coming into the corporate world, they're really nervous. They don't know, what they don't know. They come in and if they get an opportunity to serve, where they know the industry, and they get to be connected to that community, that military community, they really the deal sells themselves. I mean, they have a lot of confidence. They know all the acronyms. They can go and really be successful, set themselves up for success. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these guys and women are incredibly successful. So I think, just having that overarching ability, and I mix not only that passion of serving the fire service, but I take I have a slideshow and I include in a number of our addresses, but shows the progression of our catalog, and you see these Art Deco catalog covers from the 30s and the 40s, and
cool.
you go back to the ones in 1908. I mean, there's really, and you've got mixed with this passion and this higher sense of service. Look, I get it. I have a leg up on people, but there's also a lot of everybody else in our industry has that story as well. But do they execute it? It goes back to kind of the grit. It's where passion and execution meet. And so we really, before we got online today, we were talking a bit about corporate social responsibility, and do you talk about hey, what you're doing, helping other businesses and stuff, or helping as part of your business. As part of your corporate social responsibility, do you talk about your corporate giving? Gary, we were having that conversation earlier this morning. So yes, we talk about it all the time, and I don't think there's anything wrong. It'd be unnatural not to talk about it. And in this job market today, if there's a coin toss on coming to work for Ray-Ban or Darley, I'm guessing the millennials, particularly if they come from a firefighter or a military family, have got a propensity to select Darley. I shouldn't say Ray-Ban versus any other any other. And you'd be surprised, 1 out of every 65 adult males between the ages of 20 and 55 is either a firefighter or a soldier in America.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So absolutely. Let's get into that. I see why it is. I understand why it's so easy to work for Darley. I mean, number one, your leadership's awesome. That the environment, the culture is great. That the industry you serve is spectacular, in my opinion. Right. And you and I together really started digging into this corporate social responsibility thing 10 years ago, whatever it was, 12 years ago.
2008,
so
10 years ago.
10 years ago now. So we started digging into this thing with a few other CEOs that we knew and started understanding who do we want to be, what do we want to look like, and a bunch of us that were part of that group that spent the time on that really dove into it. Mm-hmm. You being one, us being another. What are the things that you're serving some great causes already just in doing business with the groups you're doing business with? What are the things that you guys find as your causes that you love to get in, that donate to, and give your time and talent to beyond business?
Yeah. So as part of our overarching CSR, we had well, first off, we try to give 10% of our after-tax profits away each year. So that either goes directly to charities or goes into our foundation. I know we both, I think, started our foundations about the same time. Mm-hmm. And people don't have to go. Ours is technically a charitable gift giving charitable trust account. So people could set those up even on their own or under their company, but it doesn't have all the restrictions of being a foundation. You can still call it a foundation. But in our case, we had an epiphany probably. And we give to over 250, maybe 300 charities a year. We had this epiphany about, in our guide, before we had this epiphany, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, our guideline was, look, we'll support mostly those charities where our employees have skin in the game. If you're on the board, if you're going and you're actually rolling up your sleeves and out, picking up litter on the highway, whatever it is, with that organization, those are the ones we want to support. Writing the check is the easy part, right? So that continues to be a guideline. But our other guideline is, we were supporting. We had an epiphany that said, look, we've got to go and give back more to the communities we serve, because we were giving a disproportionate amount to churches and hospitals and schools and things that, look, all important parts of our community, mm-hmm. and many of the communities we're in are smaller communities and, outside of Chicago where our employees live. So it's important that we continue to support those types of charities, and we do, but more of our directed gifting is going toward military charities, toward firefighting charities, more so than ever before. And while continuing to support on a larger scale, we're giving more to fewer companies. We're giving more to a handful of organizations where our employees are involved or family members are involved, or maybe if you've got a family member with diabetes, for example, we support that particular cause, or someone with Down syndrome, we support a family member with those causes.
Sure.
So.
Do you feel like that culturally your business is stronger since having a corporate social responsibility plan? Do you feel like your team members, that millennials really in our business more than ever, are engaged in our business because of the causes they can be part of serving.
Yeah.
We're finding that. I mean,
Yeah, I think that and also just the corporate social responsibility goes well beyond just, as well beyond just writing the checks. It's how much paper are you printing? I mean, what do are you turning off the lights? Are you being energy efficient? Are you going to solar? Whatever it is. So yeah, we're being guided by just being good. Right now with our water initiatives, we just donated truckloads of water to the American Red Cross for down at Tyndall Air Force Base. Truckloads of water after Hurricane Michael. So we've been doing a real lot with the Red Cross and going when we say, here's where the rubber meets the road. We're doing a lot, not for any purpose of advancing our cause, but for really just for helping those who we serve in a more organized fashion, and we'd like to do it if we've donated water purification systems into Nepal, into Haiti, into 2 African countries just in the last couple of years.
So cool to have the expertise and the resources within your business to be able to do those awesome things, isn't it?
It is. Here's a small world. We donated truckloads of water, boxes of water to Puerto Rico last year. One of our employees, 30-year employee with us, had family in Puerto Rico. They ended up getting one of our boxes of water. Can you imagine?
Awesome is that? That is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, pretty cool. So, yeah.
Okay, and when you think about this corporate social responsibility thing, what I thought about when I was looking at this is, I wish I would have done this when I was a $500,000 a year company. Anybody can do it. And anybody can, dedicate that same percentage of their profits, and I believe that you're going to have a better culture than otherwise. Do you feel the same?
Absolutely.
If you went back 30 years and started doing this, right? No matter what, your customers align with you better with this stuff. And again, if it's only for selfish reasons, right?
Then forget it.
Even if it's only for selfish reasons, I believe it's worth it.
Okay.
If your customers align with you better than if you don't have a plan, your vendors align with you better, and your team members care about the giving. Well, many of your team members, if not all of them, care about what you're giving back to. So I believe all those things equate to better profits anyway.
Yeah.
Even if you're a selfish son of a gun like some people might be.
Yeah, right. No, that's great. The only reason to give is because it's the right thing to do. But I would tell you clearly that what comes in anything in life, whatever you do good, karma, good begets good, and call it what you will, call it God's will, fate. But as you give, the rewards that come back to you inadvertently are way times the amount
for sure.
That,
so let's get in the book. I want to go into the book a bit. I love the book.
The book is amazing.
It's a book that you threw at me before it was completed to read it, and I read every bit of it. And I
Hugh's coddling it right now.
I'm actually holding it right now. What's funny is we actually implement this into our, and I was telling you earlier, we implement this book into our organization 6 months into the mentees partnering with True Mentors. So it's a gift from us to them for a couple reasons. One, the authenticity of saying, hey, look, you have the opportunity to be with a mentor who's within True Mentors who wrote this book, but also has a company who sales is over 1,000%, and they know what they're talking about, right? So this book is phenomenal, and I read a lot of it, so it's pretty awesome.
So
a lot of it.
Right, okay. And so go ahead. The main let's say the main 3 or 4 things that anybody would get out of the book. You want to go over? Paul, you want to? I can tell you, but I'm talking too much. What did you want people to get out of this book? The main 3 or 4 things, and you wrote it.
I think the main thing is, so. Let me step back for a second. After I graduated from Northwestern, I had put out on the survey in 2003, I can't believe we didn't have a sales class. And at the time, Steve Rogers, that gentleman who I had approached asking him to be on my board, he actually was on my board at that point, or very shortly thereafter. And he said, well, why don't you come back and teach the pilot course on sales at Northwestern? So I said, well, absolutely, I'll do it. So I went out, I interviewed a lot of salespeople, I put together this class material, presented it, and I never got invited back. Okay, so but I had spent all this time kind of laying out what I thought were the main premises that I wanted to get across, and then serendipitously, Gary, you and I got taken under the wing through a mentorship program by Big Jim Leotode, who Jimmy John's father, who ended up starting our chapter, and decided he wanted to bring 9 or 10 CEOs together under a new type of forum protocol using emotional emotional intelligence. And that was in 2009, I believe. And that really resonated with me, partially because I scored so low in some of the areas of emotional intelligence, particularly the self-regulation, which I'm always, we're all a work in progress, right? But I mean, I continue to work on that. And then from that, I learned about authentic leadership, and I was exposed to, through a lot of things. Whenever I have an opportunity to be around a leader, I'm always focused in on what do I really like about that person? What are they doing well? What do I not so much like? What do I want to make sure I'm not doing? So, these could be religious leaders, civic leaders, business leaders, whomever. I'm always trying to suck up I'm always trying to get out of them. I'm always trying to absorb something from that encounter. I'm like a sponge.
Watch him do this.
I'm like a sponge.
Awesome,
I really want to, and so that authentic leadership gave me an opportunity. And what I realized as I began researching this book is that companies that are run by people who came up through the sales channel are more profitable than companies whose CEOs came up through other disciplines, accounting, engineering, operations, things of that nature. And the reason why companies are more successful when they're run by somebody who came up through sales, my book supports this research, or is supported by the research that shows it's because they get it, because they have high emotional intelligence. And the big part of EI is the ability and authentic leadership is the ability to motivate people, to get them to see the vision, to get them to buy in and drink the Kool-Aid, of your company or whatever it is that you're selling, and motivate them toward a particular goal that they want to be, that they want to say, I want to follow this guy, or he gets it, I want to be with this, he's listening to me, he's taking, he's empowered me based on, the direction I think we need to go, and all of those things that we've been talking about over the last hour. So I really, at the end of the day, more than anything else, wanted to bring in. The book was designed, most small businesses like ours, Gary, we don't have really good formal sales training programs for people to come out.
True.
We come in, you get Desmond Clark just started. I don't know, how long was the orientation program? 15 minutes? I mean, yeah, okay. So, I mean, we don't have these formal.
I've been mentoring from the last.
Yeah, I know
I've been
you have.
mentoring for the last 5-6 years.
I
know him first.
Okay, I know you have.
But you're right.
But we don't have these great formal training. We don't have the benefit of an IBM or these other places. So I really wanted the book to be a handbook for them. And then at the end of the day, my key driver was I wanted it to be a playbook for our next generation of family, because the last chapter in particular goes well beyond just the selling aspects of the book. And it's a book about relationships in general, not just selling relationships.
Well, you're exactly right. I mean, when I read that book, it hit me, right between the eyes. I mean, that the best salespeople, they have to sell a vision to the customer, a vision to the solution they're going to solve, right? How are they going to fix the problem? Just like in business, as a leader in business, as a CEO, you better be selling to your team in operations and in finance, right? How are you going to solve the problem? How are you going to create the solution to solve the problem, and then what benefit does that give you? Just like you're selling to the customer. So you're doing that across the board.
And understanding it's not about us; it's all about them.
Yeah.
It's all about their pain. We only do that after we listen. We only come up with our selling solutions after we really truly listen. Yeah. And a lot of us, particularly males, are not that great of listeners. I mean, it goes back to the hunter-gatherer thing.
I agree. Yeah. So that's a problem I've had, often not listening well enough. So
I'm sorry. What'd you say?
Okay. Lastly, I want to talk about this country of America and the free enterprise system. I always like to ask my guests, my friends, could you have done this anywhere else? Could you have done this in a different system, right? China's got a big population there. We should be able to go there and build businesses 10 times the size we do here. It's 10 times the population, right? India, Russia, right? I mean, these great countries with this vast amount of land and resources. Why can't you do it there, Paul? Put this business somewhere else. What do you think?
I've had an opportunity to travel to over 80 countries in my life, and there's no country like America, clearly. I mean, we've got, it goes back to, our foundings of, 300 years ago on what we were, how we were set up as a country, and our Constitution. And I think and I'm always critical, I'm also careful to be too critical of our government and being, I'm a big laissez-faire guy. More government can stay off, the better off we will do. Mm-hmm. as a society and as individual businesses. I mean, there are certainly, one of the, as I look at our international markets, one of the charts I always look at is ease of doing business in these countries, because there are certain countries in Africa and, South America where, there's still a lot of bribery and graft and things that go on that we as a business just refuse to participate in. In fact, we make every international account has to sign off on all of our documentation, FCPA, Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, and other things, making sure that they're going to abide. We make them watch a video, and that they're going to abide by all of our rules, and they're not going to put us into any type of position that's doing anything that's illegal. But so I think from the United States standpoint, we don't see much of that. I've never personally. And maybe I can't really ever recall somebody coming out and kind of being blatantly. I guess we all get the letters from Nigeria and stuff.
You're not in the paving business. I know that.
Yeah, is that right? Okay, yeah. Well, in any event, yeah. So I've just never really been approached by anyone trying to do that. I do think the more that our government can do with the deregulation that's been taking place under President Trump has been great. I will tell you his duties have had a negative impact on my business significantly. We ship about $25 million a year into China, and our duties on our fire trucks are going up. They just went up 5% September 1st. I've got right now about, I don't know, guessing we've got 30 fire trucks on order. I'm not quite sure that there's a 25% duty imposed on those if they're not imported into the country by January 1st. Look, it's not going to happen. So I don't know what's going to happen. Same thing with fire pumps. I don't know what's going to happen with that business. So we don't input our pumps. Our products are all made in America. So we don't import any products for our pumps or for fire trucks from China or elsewhere. So we're not really going to be hurt by the duties coming into the tariffs coming into the United States. But shipping into China and perhaps other retaliatory tariffs that are on the rise are going to impact our export business. So not all of the things that are happening right now are necessarily. In fact, I would say I'm agnostic or somewhat neutral in terms of the overall tax cuts for Trump, based on all of the other things that are taking place.
Sure. And okay, one question I like to ask as well is, think about that the 35-year-old Paul Darley. How is that about what you were when you took the seat?
34, yeah.
34-year-old Paul Darley when you took the seat of CEO. When you think of if there's anything you could have done from that time to this time that'd be better than you are today, and the company better than you are today, is there one thing you would say, or one thing maybe you did focus on that was a big part of your success that you would recommend to any CEO taking a seat like you did?
At the time, I had a few overriding premises. My first was don't screw it up. Okay, I mean, I had a lot right, and interestingly enough, a lot of people who want you to screw it up. Inherently, people want that. Some people, I don't know where it comes from, but but conversely, I also had a lot of cheerleaders and people supporting me.
Sure.
Number two was watch cash. I'm just totally focused on cash all the time. Companies don't go out of business because they lose money. They go out of business because they run out of cash. And so I'm very cognizant of that. And the last premise that I continue to live by is customer service at all expense. So I mean, look, our advertisements for our company feature my home telephone number. Look, this is Paul Darley's home number. It's a picture of my phone, in my house, saying if you're not 100% happy with your purchase or you have got a product, I want to be the first to hear about it. Call me instead of somebody else. So
do you ever get any calls on that phone?
Heidi made me move the phone to my side of the bed. This was about 10 years ago when we first came out with the ad campaign. Most of the calls were 2:00 in the morning, just seeing if it was really my number. My question would be, did you win the bet? Because the firefighters, they work 24 hours on.
That's funny.
Yeah. So, and it obviously would have my cell phone and all too. But yeah, so I get a lot of calls, but just the feeling the customers know that they can have access to me goes a long way. So those would be the three main. Don't go too far out of your lane, but also don't get too comfortable. So as we've innovated and as we've continued to grow our business, I've always looked for both lateral markets. Where can we get this? Don't stray too. If you look at the a Porter's, I always do a Porter's 5 forces analysis, looking at before you go into any market, on the power of the competition and the power of the supplier and the power of the customer and barriers to entry in terms of right down the line substitutions. But so I always make sure that I look at Porter's 5 forces. But I also am very cognizant of the business model that lists your customers. It's similar to 80/20, but selling new products to new customers down in that lower right hand quadrant is by far the highest is the highest chance of failure. It's the most costly. And so you've got to if you can sell current products to new customers, that's good. You can sell, current, if you have your current customers who you can sell new products to, but stay away from getting too far out of your swimming lane.
Sure. I mean, it's all about relationships again, right? If you have great relationships of trust with your best customers, right? They're more apprehensive to try something new, and even if you're transparent again, you'll say this is new to us, right?
Yeah.
We're going to give you a deal on this. It's new to us, but if you'll try it, we'd love you to be one of our piloting partners, right?
There you go.
And way better off there, aren't you?
I think absolutely.
Because if you fail, you're transparent. If it's not as good as you think, hey, oops, they didn't pay a lot for it, and they're your partners in piloting it, right?
Yeah, that's good. That's
Cool.
good, Gary.
I
I
love
like that, brother.
I love it. Anything else you got there, Q? What are you thinking, man? We got a lot of squeezed a lot of juice out of the.
We squeezed a lot out of
the orange here,
out of the orange, out of the fire truck, out of everything. Absolutely, got some amazing true takeaways. First, treat everyone fairly, not equally. I've never heard that before, but you made a lot of sense.
You obviously didn't read all of it.
But the 80/20 rule is important in all things, so I think that's true. Grit equals passion. Grit is where passion and execution meet, and that was really good. Something that I don't know if you knew that you said it. Well, obviously you said it, but innovation doesn't always have to be radical. And I think specifically nowadays we think it has to just be this new thing, just like Uber and Lyft. It has to be so just innovative, and not necessarily. It could be the smallest things that can make you the biggest profit. So that was pretty awesome. Ask questions that take relationships to the next level, as you call it, code shifting.
Code shifting.
And code shifting, that's really awesome. But I think the biggest takeaway in this, because I think everybody wants to leave a legacy. And I think the one thing that you said, legacy isn't something you leave behind, but it's something that you build each day. And that's huge. And I can see you doing that every single day out there at the Darley Corporation. You've actually been doing it with those within True Mentors. And I just appreciate you, my friend, for letting me be involved in your life in some way. And I'm going to do all I can to become part of the top 10. I want to get that invite. I need to get that invite. So I need to move up.
It's not easy.
Obviously.
Believe me, I've been working hard for it.
Well, first thing, I need to accept the invites that he gives me. So once I get an invite, everything is off. So
there you go.
I appreciate you coming, though.
All right,
Paul,
thanks
a lot, brother. I love you, man.
Yeah, appreciate it. Love you.
And we'll see you all next time on Ditch Diggers CEO.
See ya.